And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thanks so much for joining us once again with a brand new guest, and that is Ken Blackwell. Ken, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Peter, it's good to be with you, sir.
Oh, thank you. And possibly our UK viewers, we have a mix of UK and US viewers. Ken Blackwell, a teacher, Mayor of Cincinnati, former Secretary of State for Ohio, national chairman for Steve Forbes' presidential campaign in 2000. That's a whole other conversation. Maybe another time we'll talk about that. Senior fellow, of course, at the Family Research Council and president of Council for National Policy. People can find you at Ken Blackwell is your X handle. Blackwell, Ohio is your Facebook page, which is very popular. I encourage people to make use of both of those. But maybe I can ask a little bit of your background from education into politics. Maybe give people, I've given some of your key roles, but give us a little bit of your background before we get on to the latest shutdown in DC.
Well, I when my dad came back from World War II, he came back to Cincinnati. There was still vestiges of segregation. There was a housing shortage, so I spent my early years in a public housing community. We eventually moved to market housing. I went through the public schools in Cincinnati, won a scholarship to Xavier University, where I got my undergraduate and master's degree. Later came back to run their Center for Urban Affairs and Urban Studies, and then became not only an associate professor there, but an associate vice president of the university. Went on to city council, became mayor of the city, which I thought was very, very interesting that a kid from public housing grew up to be mayor of his hometown. Went from there to HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Department with Jack Kemp. Jack was a personal friend of mine. And then moved from there to the State Department with Jim Baker, where for 3 years I was the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations in charge of the human rights portfolio. Came out of there and became treasurer of the state of Ohio and then secretary of state of Ohio. Lost a bid in 2006 to be governor of the great state of Ohio, and then went into the private sector, which I was not unfamiliar with, having been one of the owners of Blue Chip Broadcasting, which had 20 radio stations across 5 states in the country, but also associated with a various number of think tanks, among them the Family Research Council, the Heritage Foundation, and now the America First Policy Institute. And I try to move not only ideas, but coordinate action among conservatives across the country and in targeted states to make ideas into good policy that actually improve the lives of the people in the state that we're working in or in the country. In a nutshell, that's it. I've been blessed to work at all levels of government and to have a leadership position in the conservative movement, which in fact is steeped in and deeply tied to a fundamental belief that was part of my upbringing in a very close-knit family, and that is that families are where the traditions are formulated, and it gives you your value grounding. And I had a family that was organized around 3 books. The date book, which your calendar, it told how you spend your time and with whom you spend it. And then the checkbook, no matter how meager your resources, your stewardship of those resources were important, what you invested in, what you saved. And then the third, but most important book was the good book, the Bible. It helped you choose the path of conviction over the path of convenience. And so those family roots and a fundamental understanding that the founders of my country got it right when they said that in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. My dad used to say, that's a highfalutin way of saying any knucklehead should be able to get this, that, that all of us are created equal, that we're made in God's image, and that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But really what was buried in there was a fundamental understanding that our rights are not grants from government, but gifts from God. And so I've grown into being a conservative that tries to limit the power and reach of government and to create an environment where individual liberty and families can flourish.
On your book, Rebuilding America, goes into that and talks about creating strong families. And you're right, if you get your time, your finances, your relationship with God right, then you're far ahead of most. And of course, it's that attack on the family that we are seeing from the left. Looking into your background, and one thing I saw, was it maybe 2005, your work there on election integrity? And I just ask you because we have Jody Hicks on Monday. Of course, you wrote the foreword for his book. But that area of election integrity, I think, Ray, you were kind of involved in that maybe 20 years ago. This was in Ohio, I think.
Yes,
Refresh us on that.
Yeah, in the 2004 election, the left came after me because, I've always been focused, and let me put this in context. I've done elections all over the globe. I was the chairman of the International Foundation of Electoral Systems, and not only the chairman, but when my party was not in the lead, I was the co-chairman. And so I've been focused on election matters for quite some time now. And what I try to focus in on is the chain of custody, making sure the chain of custody is very, very tight. The more loose a chain of custody is, the more opportunity there is for wrongdoing and things going haywire. The other is verification, and to make sure that voters are who they say that they are. And over the last 10 years, I've also focused in on citizenship, making sure that only those folks who are citizens of our country, either by birth or naturalization, qualify for casting a ballot. And because I see elections as being the foundation of our constitutional republic, which in fact puts an emphasis on individual liberty and engagement, and it puts a check on the heavy concentration of power in government. And so that's what I've been able to do. In 2024, Ohio was I said 2024. In 2004, Ohio was the battleground state. It was the make it or break it state. I ran a tight ship, and now in retrospect, most folks said that it was a clean election. We, in fact, but we got attacked from the left because they said that I had suppressed the ballots of voters, because I essentially said that you must vote in the precinct in which you're registered. You, in fact, must be able, because one, normally in our precinct-based system, people who work the precincts actually know most of the folks who come through there. So that was the early form of voter verification that we had. The other thing where they tried to exploit a process or happening in our system was that back in the 90s, Bob Taft, who later became governor, was the Secretary of State, and many of the voter groups were encouraging newspapers to have voter registration forms where they could, in fact, register the vote through tearing out the paper, filling out the form, and sending it in. Well, one of the things that Bob Taft realized, basically because he got feedback from the U.S. Postal Service, was that the paper, that the newsprint was so thin that as it was going through the mail sorters, it was ripping up those registrations. And so he established a paperweight that could go through the mail sorters and protect the registration of voters. Well, by 2004, people started to get photo opportunities by hand delivering boxes of voter registrations that they had organized to keep. Somebody said, well, Blackwell is trying to suppress voter registration because he has this paperweight. Well, it didn't take long to dispel that. But what was at stake? They used every bullet in their gun to try to disrupt the system and cause some credibility challenges to George Bush's election. We got through that. But again, it heightened my understanding that in our constitutional republic, vote matters, and making sure that election integrity is in place by tightening the chain of custody and verifying that voters are who they claim to be. And in the last few years, I've tried to focus on citizenship to make sure that those folks who are registering to vote haven't found a soft spot in our system where non-citizens can participate. And I've also concentrated on making sure that our voter rolls are cleaned up. Because if I could borrow from one of the United States' great thieves, when asked why he robbed banks, he said, because that's where the money is. Well, if those who want to mess with election systems, they look at bloated and corrupt voter rolls because they know that's where the opportunity is to skew elections in a illegal fashion.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
So don't wait. Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
Well, there's a lot more work to do on that, making sure that voters' say is represented in the final election, the final result. But Ken, can I ask you, at the moment, as we speak, the US has gone into the shutdown. Now, forgive me for my comments or any UK perceptions on it that don't fit in, but the US government has effectively shut down after the Democrats refused to back the Republican funding plan. I think the last ditch vote was 55-45, which I think is short of what is needed. Give us a little bit of kind of background on this. What does this mean? And is this simply about health? Because that's what the Democrats made it. But give us a little bit of an update on what has been happening.
Well, look, the fact of the matter is that we have an increasingly troublesome debt that the United States has. And one of the things that the Republicans have committed themselves to this time around is to get our finances in order. And one of the ways that you do that is that you start to scale back on bloated government and runaway spending. The Republicans have basically asked for, and it passed the House, a clean resolution, continuing resolution that would allow us to move forward and work on writing our financials through the end of around the end of November. The Democrats, for whatever reason that they have tried to articulate, have and none of them make sense. They've basically thrown a monkey wrench into the process, which has shut the government down. One of the things that I think they've misjudged is the resolve not only of the House but the majority in the Senate and the president. And what they misunderstand is that we have been working with folks across voters and state legislatures, governors across this country, not only in messaging but in trying to right the wrongs of the past, fiscal wrongs of the past. And most Americans agree with us. And so we're going to hold the line, and we'll let Schumer and the radical left make their case. I'm confident that we will win this. We have the staying power. And what we basically said is that, some of the folks who are now quitting and hand-wringing around the the shutdown because of the fiscal belt tightening that we are advocating, we'll get to work and we'll cut more of the fat out of the government. And I think we can do that in a convincing way, where people can see that their essential needs are met, and that we are working with state governments to make sure that our federal system works as it should work, without the federal government going deeper and deeper into debt.
And the vote was along what you've got 53 Republicans in the Senate, don't you, and 2 independents, I think. So it was 55-45. So it was purely along ideological lines. It's not as if you had 1 or 2 Democrats saying, actually, we need to get this through. They were the term in the UK, they were whipped to vote along party lines. How do you kind of break that impasse?
Well, I think you break it by them saying that, one, we have resolve; two, that we are speaking to the interests and to the liking of a functional majority of the American people. I just don't think that they can withstand the pressure that they're going to get back home to get on with the business of a fiscally responsible federal government. Look, one of the things that I understand, because I crisscross the country, is that we have more state legislative chambers under Republican control, and our leaders in the Senate and the House do a good job of working with the leaders in those states. And so we're building a grassroots messaging process where we are now not just whistling Dixie. We are actually putting policies on the plate that reflect the legitimate interests of the American people.
I mean, how does it play out with the voters? Because the Republican administration, Trump administration, will say, we put a deal on the table. We want to sign it. We'll sign it right now. The Democrats obviously say, no, this is just damaging to the American people. We're not going to sign it. And then you've got the whole battle in the media, with the media deciding who is at fault. Do you pick one side or the other? Because you have to have a boogeyman, of course, with the media. How does that play out with the American people? And of course, far out from any election.
Well, many of the Main Street establishment media now are being viewed by a clear majority of the American people as being the mouthpieces of the radical left. And again, as I said in our beginning, I've come up through radio. My colleagues used to tell me that I had a face that was made for radio. so I've come up through radio, and one of the things that I know is that most Americans now put their weight on neighborhood newspapers and radio, and so we're talking to them through those media, and it makes a difference. And so one, I think a lot of the establishment media have marginalized their own voices because they try to defend an agenda of the radical left. And one of the things that, again, I know from crisscrossing the globe in my international capacities is that socialism does not work. Communism does not work. The proof is in the pudding, and we put that proof in front of the American people. And we actually know that, one, getting our hands wrapped around the debt challenge in America, and making sure that we don't tax ourselves into mediocrity, that we, in fact, can put our country on a path of economic growth. And that is so important. And my colleagues across Europe understand this. We have some challenges. One, we have a very, very low birth rate. Two, we've let the left break down our borders, move us to a globalist worldview, as opposed to understanding that we can be a influential and powerful nation state that is open to collaboration with other countries across the globe. So cooperation with others, other nation states, does not mean that we have to abandon either our borders or the common interests of our people. And I can tell you, one of the benefits of having been a member of city council, mayor of my hometown, is that I know how to take messages, and therefore the groups that I work with know how to take messages directly to the people. We don't have to depend on establishment media to be our interpreters. We come from those communities across the country.
There was one thing I saw the president suggesting that his administration could take major action, I think, during the shutdown, including cutting government benefits, and using this time. Again, I don't know the exact processes, but in the government shutdown, does that mean that the president is allowed to do things that may not be able to happen before, and be able to push through some of the ideas and the reasons he was elected for? I don't know. Is that possible, or is he just
no?
trolling?
It's not just talk. Those are reins that are in the hands of the administration, and he has a hardworking, very bright office of management and budget, and Russ Vought and that team, know ways that are within the four corners of the law to use the scissors to cut not only red tape, but to cut through waste. And believe me, this time around, we will not make the mistakes that were made in the first administration. I tend to be of that school of thought that it probably was divine intervention that interrupted the president's two terms, because it gave us 4 years to really reflect on where our weaknesses were in the first administration and what the battle lines of attack were of the opposition. And we come into this second administration very, 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 very strong and much smarter than we were in the first administration. And we did some great things in the first administration, only to have some of those things disrupted by COVID and the inexperience of how to deal with that in a way that that made sense and didn't just permanently bloat government.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. That divine break has meant that President Trump is much more able to address. But the shutdown doesn't mean everything stops. I mean, planes don't fall out of the sky. Air traffic control continues. There are essential services that continue. So the country still operates to an extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the wringing of the hands, the stomping of the feet. Look. When I grew up, my grandmother was a housekeeper for 4 families in Cincinnati, and so one of the families, the head of the household, was a professor at the University of Cincinnati, and so she would bring me books. And one of my favorite authors was Lewis Carroll, and I remember one time he had painted this picture of the Mad Hatter at a long banquet table. With colleagues, and they had made a mess in front of themselves, and their way of solving the mess that they had made was to move to a clean spot on the table and make another mess. Well, that's exactly the way the federal government has worked, and this time around we're not going to let the Mad Hatter syndrome win. We actually know how to rein in the debt spending and to accelerate economic growth and job creation, and to work very, very hard to make sure that our federal system works and we don't have too much concentration of power in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. Let's just end on a picture. And I normally, just for our viewers, I normally have just over here, I've normally got a MAGA hat. My son took it to his school, and you can't really argue if your child wants to take a MAGA hat to school, go on to his politics class. But I saw these pictures here. Let me just bring this up. And it was this Trump trolling, Trump posting, releasing a picture of the conversations and with those Trump 2028 hats. Oh, I so want one of those. I so want one of those one day. But I mean, it's again, President Trump knows how to play to the media. He knows how to use the power of media. And just putting those up puts pressure. They seem to be jovial, happy. The Democrats don't seem to be concerned that there's a shutdown. Just your thoughts on those pictures and how President Trump uses the social media so powerfully.
The president understands that he has a direct line of communication with the American people. He also knows that pictures are worth thousands of words. I grew up. I boxed in the Golden Gloves. One of my first 5 bouts, the 6th bout, I got hit so hard in the nose that I had to go home and tell my dad I was going to find a more scholarly career to pursue. But I became friends with Muhammad Ali, then Cassius Clay, and his brother. And so let me just end by saying that what you see is that President Trump has mastered the Ali strategy of rope-a-dope. And so, and that's what he does. And lo and behold, the minority leaders of this House and Senate play right into his hands. He is not afraid to get into the grill of the people that he's having a disagreement with, and he knows that as compared to those guys, he's a master communicator. But not only is he a master communicator, he actually understands that he is probably the true definition of a blue collar billionaire. He knows how working people think, and it comes from years upon years of going out, understanding that he wasn't building those towers in his properties. It was working people, and he learned how to talk with them and work with them, and it's paying off.
Oh, absolutely, and let's certainly pray that Trump is able to get through these negotiations to reduce the size of government, to cut that debt, which I know he believes in absolutely, and he stood on that so completely. But Ken, really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us from DC to give us a little bit of an insight into the latest shenanigans in DC. We'll put it that way. But thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Peter. God bless.